Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and even another episode in our Atomiswave to Dreamcast port series. It's so exciting to have so many games to talk about. I love talking about each and every one of them. And today we're taking a look at Knights of Valor. This actually is a series that's been around a lot longer than most people might realize. It originally started on the IGS PGM series of arcade boards, which is very similar to the Neo Geo MVS. And this game evolves the formula because all the games previously were 2D backgrounds and sprites, and this is using the 3D power of the Dreamcast or Atomiswave to push 3D polygons around with some sprite work. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, ring that notification bell, and if you feel so inclined, we got a Patreon link down there as well if you want to support the channel. But you get a ton of different characters in the game, and this is your classic 2D beat 'em up. Think Streets of Rage, think Final Fight, except it's got a very Chinese history sort of background to it. And you'll see here as the game starts, everything is in polygons except your character sprite and the enemies you're going to be facing. And if you've never played a game in this series, you really wouldn't notice it too much, but it reuses a lot of assets from previous games. Most of the enemies you're going to see have been in a different Knights of Valor game. But that's not to say that's a problem, because they look great, they have awesome animations, and everything has a lot of life and character to it. So to me, it's not a complaint whatsoever. A new game in the series is always a fun time. But like I said, if you like arcade beat-em-up games, kind of that hack and slash combat, you're really going to enjoy this. And this is a game that rarely, if ever, I hear mentioned. This entire series, if you're not an arcade collector, if you're not a huge fan of arcade games, you might not even really know they exist. But I love all the sprite work. These guys come up in what look like bulletproof vests when they're wearing their sumo underwear thongs. The game has a sense of humor while also looking amazing. And I do think that the polygons in this game actually look really nice, because usually when there's a mix of visuals, something like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the sprites stand out a lot, but in a 2D fighting game it works. But in something like this where you're moving a 2D sprite on a 3D plane, it can sometimes look and feel odd, but in this game it works perfectly. Now, as far as the combat's concerned, the number one aspect of playing this game is you want to stack your enemies, because with this double hit upward thrust with that pike, as many enemies as are within your reach, you're going to attack. So you really want to make your attacks timed correctly, because you can kill 4 to 5 enemies at the same time. And you'll see here, just moving a little bit further ahead, there is some story in the game. It's not that deep. There's a lot of, bad grammar or misspellings, but it's a really interesting story in its own right. And this game kind of plays out with like a choose your own adventure novel. You're going to get a lot of different branching paths, and you would have to play this game 4 to 5 times in a row to see everything there is to see. And it definitely is fun enough where you're going to want to do all of that. Now, I will say the game can be a little bit difficult, and the boss life bars just seem to go on forever. But obviously, this being a port onto the Dreamcast, it doesn't really matter how many credits you go through, because it's on free play and you're not actually taking quarters out of your pocket. And again, it's just so nice to be able to have something like this on the Dreamcast, because the only way to play this before would be emulating it, on the Atomiswave, or owning an original Atomiswave board, a super gun, and the cartridge. And it's not the most expensive game on the platform, but you're still talking about hundreds of dollars to enjoy it in its original format. And now we can just play it on the Dreamcast for free, with an optical disc emulator or in a Dreamcast emulator as well. And you'll see here, now that we're on the chapter 2, we have 3 choices of the level we want to go to next. And to see the entire game, you'd have to play from the beginning 2 more times to see what options are here. Some options are good, some options are bad. We've chosen to talk to the king in the pyramid, and he's not exactly happy to see us today, so we're going to end up immediately in another boss battle. And I do like the cadence of the game. Sometimes you're just going through stages, fighting, basic, enemies. Other times, the minute you're done with a boss, you're magically into another boss fight at the beginning of that stage. So it really does mix it up, and it has a great feel to it. And I can't say enough good things about it. The sprite work in this game, it's incredible. I love all this, animation. It's very fluid. It's not the best sprite work ever to be done, but it looks really nice, and it just has a nice colorful visual to it that I really appreciate and enjoy. Even, those special attacks there, they use some polygonal aspects to it while allowing the sprites to be there as well. So it's a really interesting kind of concept, and I jump here and somehow land on an invisible floor before I fall through. But it's a lot of fun. And what I want you to do is just watch a little bit of the game here. You'll see there stacking again, super important. And I'll come back in a minute and we'll close out Knights of Valor, but enjoy. It's got a great soundtrack and sound effects, and I'll be back in just a second. I do love how many enemies this game will throw at you at once. You can be fighting a dozen, minor characters, and you have to manage your screen space and really see exactly what's going on the entire time. There might be somebody coming up behind you, everyone may be in front of you, you may be trying to move them around to stack them so you can get hits on multiple enemies at once, but there's always a lot of screen space management that needs to be done, and that really gives it an extra layer to the game that I quite enjoy. But now that we have taken a death, we're going to switch characters, because one of the big compliments to this game is that different characters don't just have a different special attack, but otherwise play very similarly. Each character has their own kind of weighted movement, their own attacks, so that when you play a different character, it really does fundamentally feel different, and I enjoy that about the game. And again, like I mentioned previous, now that we're on to Chapter 3, again, we have 3 different branching paths. So now, if you played the game, from Chapter A to Chapter 3, I should have said Chapter 1, you have different options to use. So there is a ton of replayability in this game, and for an arcade game, that's not something that usually happens. Usually maybe you'll play it twice, 3 times at the most, and you'll see everything, but you can really go back and forth through this game, creating your own path and have a lot of different options. Because now we're on an escort mission and we need to keep Pang Tong there alive long enough to get to the end of the stage. So each stage gives you different sort of play styles, it gives you different options on how you want to go, but primarily it is still a beat 'em up, and the beat 'em up action is great. The impacts of your attacks really feel like they land. You can juggle your opponents. There's some strategy in how you want to move around. So it's an excellent beat 'em up, and being able to play it on the Dreamcast is awesome, because like I said, this is a game that I don't hear mentioned very much at all, and it should be mentioned a lot more now that it's available on the Dreamcast. So again, big thanks to MegaVolt 85 for figuring out the entire porting process to get these games running from the Atomiswave onto the Dreamcast. But if you have any questions, any comments, leave them down below. I love chatting with you guys, and if you have any issues getting these to run on your Dreamcast or in your emulator, I'm happy to help. I love dealing with those sort of problems. Short of that, like I said earlier, if you could do me a huge favor, go down below and hit like and subscribe and hit notification bell. It really helps us out. We'll have videos on Sunday, Tuesdays, and Fridays, and the next time another unported Atomiswave game comes to the Dreamcast, I will definitely make a video. Short of that, we'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed this. Bye-bye.